Thanks for joining us today for Think Big with Michael Zellner, powered by Sleepy Z's Masonry. My guest today for episode 152 is Michael Attias. Michael is the founder and CEO of CaterZen, which is a web-based catering software company in Nashville that he founded in May of 2008. He is also a speaker, a consultant, and an author. Michael is originally from Memphis and graduated from Ridgeway High School. He attended college at the University of Memphis, where he got his bachelor's degree in marketing and advertising. Full transparency here, Michael and I have known each other our whole lives. We grew up together on the same street. And growing up, a lot of us younger folk were always in awe because Michael always dated the most beautiful women in the neighborhood by far. I am very thankful that he has had and still has a very big influence on my life in a positive way. And he definitely has one of the smartest business and marketing minds of anyone I have ever known. Welcome to the show, my lifelong friend.
Oh my God, I feel I need to Venmo you $50 right now.
Well,
Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure.
We both know where all the skeletons are buried.
Yeah, yes, we do. And they'll stay buried, thankfully. Before we get started today, I'd like to thank our two sponsors for Think Big with Michael Zellner, Roof and Nail and Buckley's Grill. Roof and Nail is one of the leading experts in insurance restorations. Co-owner Kelly Potter and his crews are preferred vendors of many mainstream insurance companies focused on the tri-state areas of Tennessee, Arkansas, and Mississippi. And not only can Roof and Nail provide you with the best evaluation on your roof to see if you qualify for insurance approval, but they also can provide you with a competitive bid for any out-of-pocket roofing projects. Big or small, they do them all. Buckley's Grill, it's a hidden gem for those seeking a fantastic dining experience here in Memphis. It's locally owned by Jeff Fiorinelli and Ken Dick. They have specialized in steaks and Southern hospitality here for over 30 years. The upscale restaurant boasts a contemporary atmosphere with a touch of classic elegance. And from the moment you step inside, you're greeted with a friendly staff. The wait staff there is amazing, great food, warm hospitality, and you feel right at home. So we want to make sure we thank them before we get started today.
So, it's if I can interject.
Sure.
Ken Dick and I used to wait tables at Corky's together.
That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah. He started at Corky's with you. Yeah. Small world, how everything sort of comes together and everybody either knows each other or knows of people that know each other. That's just how it is.
Memphis is about as inbred as you can get for not being in Mississippi. No, nothing disrespectful to my friends in Mississippi.
So, Michael, what are some of the best memories, growing up as a kid, some of your early school years before Ridgeway, that still make you smile when you think about them today?
It's funny, when you meet people, they ask, where'd you grow up? My family moved over from France when we were young, and we grew up in the same neighborhood. I literally live right down the street from you, and people go, oh my God, Memphis. And they have a negative connotation of Memphis, but the Memphis I grew up in, I had a charmed childhood. Like, I feel sorry for kids today that their parents watch them like hawks, that they can't run the streets. And we didn't get in any trouble. I mean, you did, rolling houses, but that's a whole nother, that's a whole nother thing. But even that is minor compared to what kids are doing today. Like, we grew up in a neighborhood, you could take your bike on the dirt trails. You had clubhouses and tree houses in the woods. You could go run the greenhouse. It was a commercial greenhouse behind David Lewis's house, and you could run through there, and they had a Coke machine for 10 cents. It'd have ice crystals in it, best Coke I've ever had.
Absolutely.
Wausean School was on a lake, and I'd go fishing on there. And I remember Trey Noble, he had a housekeeper. We caught brim, and she fried them up with cornmeal batter, made homemade biscuits, and we got honey for the biscuits from the Boyd's hives. We would ride our bikes up to Kirby Woods Mall to get our free battery every month from Radio Shack. When it snowed and iced outside, we'd go in the creek and skate on what we thought was like a frozen lake. It was just frozen water, and sled down a hill, which as a kid, it looks like you're on top of Breckenridge, but as an adult, it's probably only about 10 feet long of a run.
Right.
We could go to our friend's house, play video games, eat snacks. Definitely our share of every sport you can imagine. Baseball, football, baseball played in somebody's front or backyard. I mean, it was really, I mean, until the sun went down, we were locked out and told to drink out of the garden hose. I mean, it was a great childhood.
Yeah, I think about the sums. You talk about that hill. Yeah, the one at the very end of Massey Lane,
Yeah.
uh, going sliding down that hill. Yeah, right. People that are kids today don't understand when you tell them about childhood in the '80s, music in the '80s, movies in the '80s. It was the best time. I mean, it really
Yeah, and
was.
really my childhood was in the 70s. You started in the 70s. It was great. And it was a time where you could let your kid run wild, because I think part of it is media. Like, we know that if little Susie gets kidnapped in California, everybody knows there's 300 news channels. Back then, if something happened to a kid in California you didn't know, you only knew about what happened in your backyard. And at that time, most people, their mom stayed at home. So you were parented by every mother in the neighborhood. If you were acting up, somebody else's mother would let you have it.
Right. Yeah.
So there wasn't a lot of trouble to get into.
I believe as a teenager, when you worked at the Loft restaurant over on Mount Moriah, which later turned into the infamous Platinum Plus. What did it teach you about responsibility, discipline, and maybe also partially guide you to what you wanted to do in life?
Well, I think you need to take a step back. My parents, my dad came over here from France. Um, it's a long story. I don't know how much of a story you want to go into how we got here.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so do you know who Benny Saccharin was, on Nylanet?
Yeah.
So at the time in the 60s, he was the largest manufacturer of commercial fish netting and twine in the world before the Japanese took over the manufacturing, gold spot in the world. And his mom my understanding, his mom owned a fish market. And when the fishermen would come off the Mississippi River, he would mend the nets that were broken. And then he decided, hey, I'm spending all this money on twine. I'm going to make my own twine. So he made twine, and then he made nets, and then he built it, into a real powerhouse. Well, they bought machinery from France. It was called Zang, was the company that made the machines and made the twine and net. They had a fire in the 60s. They called back and said, hey, we've had this fire. Can you send over one of your guys to help us rebuild from this fire all of our equipment? Brought my dad over, like what my dad did. We came over here when I was 2.5 years old. And my dad worked I saw my dad work his ass off. He'd go to work before I'd wake up in the morning. He'd come home at 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. We couldn't eat dinner till he got home, worked half a day on Saturdays. So I saw a man who worked his ass off, didn't enjoy himself, went into business with a partner, very industrious. And I think if he had been a little bit more savvy on business, he probably would have made it. Didn't have a great partner. My parents went bankrupt. So when your parents are fighting about money, like, look, all the people, like, I know you never had to worry about money, and all the kids you grew up with, they could ask their parents for 10, 20 bucks, go out to dinner, go to a movie. They didn't really work that hard in high school, most of them. When your parents are fighting about bills, you're not going to ask your dad for 20 bucks to go to the movies. So I was hustling when I was 12 years old, cutting grass, babysitting. And in fact, what's funny is I've always been about lifestyle. So I tell this story to people. I used to cut the Elster's yard and one other yard. It took me an hour. I didn't bag, I didn't weed eat, I didn't edge, I didn't rake, I didn't do anything. I just cut. It took me 1 hour. I got 25 bucks. So 25 bucks for 1 hour in the late 70s, it's like making 100 bucks
right
today. I'm surprised I got that much money. So I had 50 bucks a week, and that's all I needed to go to the JCC every day, play tennis in the morning, go to the snack bar, swim in the afternoon, watch soap operas, shoot pool, play ping pong. And I've always been about lifestyle. So my first job was really before my first job. And then I'm heading you down a path. If you remember, the preppy movement was big when we were kids, button down shirts and, crazy color pants and plaid pants. And I wanted a job at Oak Hall. Well, when you shop at Steinmart to look preppy, you ain't getting a job at Oak Hall. So I got turned down from there. Then I said, okay, I'm going to try to get a job at Cecil's Bagging Groceries. I had to take a lie detector test. I think I failed it because I have a guilty conscience. Because when they ask you a question, have you ever stolen anything from anyone? Your brain starts going, well, yeah. I mean, I've taken a pen. Is that stealing? Is it borrowing? So maybe that's the reason I didn't get hired. And then Paul Heitman, who lived one street over, he was a busboy at the loft. He says, hey, they're hiring dishwashers. And I went into interview. There's a stack of applications over an inch thick to get a job washing freaking dishes. And I got hired to wash dishes because of Paul. I wouldn't have gotten the job without him. And I remember that was the shittiest job you could ever do. Like, you're literally soaking wet. If you're not washing dishes, you're scrubbing pots and pans. And let me tell you, you come home, your fingers are all terrible. And when you're throwing trash at 1 o'clock in the morning when it's ice cold and you've got water dripping over you from a trash can, it's a very humbling experience. And basically, I did such a bad job washing dishes, they made me a busboy. And I've always had this zest to do more and to come up with ideas and to contribute. And so I remember as a kid, Saturday night was always that was my holy grail. It's the night to go out with your friends. It's the night to go out on a date. I didn't care about Friday, nothing else. And I didn't control the schedule. So I went to my manager at the loft and I said, man, they really work you hard here. I said, why don't I help you out and I'll make out the busboy schedule. So I just controlled my own schedule. So I never had to work Saturday night and I could have my pick of schedule. And then I ended up waiting tables there. They built a new addition. I talked them into doing a giveaway, a trip. They go, well, if you can make it happen. I remember calling a travel agency. They gave us a trip. I mean, I'm basically just like 18, 19 years old putting together this promotion just off the top of my head. So they gave me a great opportunity. I learned a lot there, did a lot of things in the kitchen. And then, ended up at Corky's, which, we can talk about that whenever.
Yeah, that was my next thing. You got hired at Corky's on Poplar, the original Corky's, and by your longtime friend and mentor, founder Don Peltz. Tell us a little bit about that and about your relationship with Don.
Don was as crazy as they come, but he was so freaking smart. But you wouldn't know it talking to him because he comes across goofy. I often, I see Barry, his son and daughter-in-law down here at the beach multiple times a year. I've had dinner with his widow, Linda, and we talk about stories. And it's like when Don first started Corky's, I was there 9 months after they started. And if you know Corky's in Memphis, at one point, they closed on a wait. They were busy from open to close. And when I started there at 8:30, you could shoot a shotgun and not hit anybody. And it was a great job. I loved the food, loved the people, believed in the concept. It was great. You were done early and you could go out and drink beer and go do whatever. You weren't working until 2 o'clock in the morning. And I rarely work weekends. I hate working weekends. And I found that working during the week was better because you had businessmen and, they would order large rib, half wet, half dry, onion loaf, Heineken's, and they tip you 20% because they're on an expense account. Right. And I never like to work the weekends because I call that amateur diners club. Somebody just got paid, taking his girlfriend out, a little tighter with money. When you're spending someone else's money, especially, that's why I like B2B. You're spending someone else's money, not your own. I learned so much from Don about marketing, about business, about systems. My funny story is one day he gave me his Toyota Corolla to go run a delivery, and I slam on the brakes and his Old Spice comes out from under the floorboard. Guy could afford anything he wanted, and he's got Old Spice. And I remember thinking, every day Don would go to breakfast. At lunch, he'd leave, and one of his friends would pick him up. They go have lunch, and I know they went out to dinner all the time. And I remember thinking, God, if I could eat out 3 meals a day, I'd be the richest guy in the world. I'm here to tell you, I do eat out pretty much 3 meals a day, and I'm not the richest guy in the world, but I'm rich enough to do that.
Right.
So that was like, I love food. I helped him with some marketing stuff. I'm the guy who got the rib shipping started for him. Um, I, I probably there's a statute of limitations, but I told Don, I said, I was always giving Don ideas, and Don, I think he ran away from me when he saw me coming. And definitely Robbie, the manager, hated any change, and she definitely shut me down. But every now and then he would listen to me. So I said, we need to do rib shipping, Don. He goes, baby, I don't know how to do that. I said, I'll figure it out. So I called the rendezvous and I said, hey, I'm a student at Memphis State. I'm doing a logistics project about your rib shipping. Can you tell me how you do it? And they told me exactly how they did it. And I told Don how to do it. And we printed up some table tents and signs in the restaurant. And that's how it all got started.
That's amazing.
I can't take credit for where it is now, but at least for starting it.
Right. I just remember him being in there a lot. Obviously, you working there, and him just singing in the restaurant in front of customers. And he just he didn't care. I mean, he didn't care. He was funny. It was just funny watching him.
He was he was a hands-on business owner. Even when they didn't need to work, they were down in Memphis in May, Higginberry making sandwiches. That's not my management style. My former business partner that backed me on Corky's, and we can talk about how that happened. Somebody said, Mr. Rackley, do you work in the restaurant? He goes, if I wanted to work, I bought a chicken farm. I don't like to work. I like everyone else doing. I like to work on a strategic level, not on a tactical level.
Right.
But it worked for them, and they built quite a dynasty out of that business.
Yes, they did. One of the things that we did for several years was sell parking places for Memphis and May events, because your dad had access. I guess it was the Saccharin, Nylon Nets parking lots down there. Those were fun times. We met a lot of interesting people. I remember actually parking a few cars for people because they were afraid to do that. And I don't even think when we started, I didn't even have a driver's license. So it's also one of my first memories of your sales and marketing ideas of us selling the hot dogs down there.
That was a bad idea.
But that mind, just like you talked about, I mean, I didn't know that you came up with the idea for the shipping. Obviously, I knew you worked at the loft, but I didn't know that you gave them ideas too. But your mind just was going crazy with business ideas at just a very young age, wasn't it?
I think most of my friends focused on sports, and I've always been interested in business. Like, I would go to the bookstores when there were bookstores. I mean, there are bookstores now, but maybe one in a city. And I would go to the business section and I would get business books, and I would do pro formas in school. Like, that was my hobby, coming up with business ideas. And everybody would laugh and go, oh, here's Attias with another crazy idea. And all it did was prepare me for where I am now. But that's what I focused on. It's like, what is it they say? If you focus an hour a day, by the end of the year, you're going to be an expert in any subject matter. Like, literally, I've read more books, gone to more seminars. That's what I did in college. That was my hobby, was business, And the hot dog stand, I will tell you, we failed because I learned a very valuable lesson is you want to sell where people are buying. No one was buying walking to the barbecue fest. They were buying food in the barbecue fest.
Right.
But what it took to put on a hot dog stand and get a health department permit, we bought a tent, we brought out a grill, the health department stuff, buying the hot dogs. Logistically, it was amazing that it was pulled off. All the profits that year from the parking lot went to take care of the losses from the hot dog stand, but it was still a valuable lesson on how to put something together and think outside the box. And I think a lot of kids today, they're denied how to think because they have their tablets. Like, I can't speak for your house. Like, I would take things apart, like tape recorders and stuff, and how things were done. And, we would build tree houses, and you had to learn how to use a saw and a hammer and a nail. And, there was just a lot more learning how to fend for yourself, and, even how to use a pocket knife or tie a fishing hook, or, just basic skills that just kids don't learn today with their tablets.
And it's coming to mind. I didn't even think about this when I was, doing research with us, because there's, no place to research this, but gentlemen bartenders, I think you and Mark Moskowitz originally started that and everything. And then you had me helping you out at a few different events I remember we did this party over like a Walnut Grove area inside a house. And then we did one maybe off of another one over in that area, some very wealthy homes. And we did one at like over in Apple Tree Center for something.
We did the US Indoors Opens, we bartended there.
Right.
And I have a picture someplace of, I don't know if you were in the picture. You and I have a picture. I don't know if you have the picture with the girl who used to be a Playboy Playmate was there with Captain Morgan's rum or something. It was a lot of fun. The reason I came up with that is if you think about business, somebody wakes up and says, you know what, I don't like the solutions available and I have a better way of doing things that I think other people would appreciate. And I remember from all the bar mitzvahs and weddings and parties I went to, it was the same thing. You had a bartender, he had some frilly velvet bow tie and, frilly tuxedo shirt. They would scoop the ice with a coffee cup and they'd stir every drink with the same spoon. And, I was a bartender at the Loft and I thought, well, what if you wore a cummerbund and a bow tie and, really nice, tux, not the jacket, but, dressed in nice tux, not something that was outdated. And what if you had little stir spoons and, you use an ice scoop and, you just had a little more panache. And I called Mark Moskowitz one day. I was at the Loft bartending and said, dude, I got this idea. And the first party we did, I think we brought Steven Sauer in. It was 3 bartenders, 3 hours for $30. We each made $33 an hour. By the time we were done, we were making $25-30 an hour plus tips. And we went to the best parties. They treated us amazingly. It's like, oh, have a plate of this. Great food. Representative Steve Cohen was on the circuit of the parties I did. I probably should keep my opinion to myself. But most of the people I met at these parties were just super chill and cool. And it was a fun little business. And I did some event planning towards the end of it. But, it's a good side hustle in college.
It was fun though. And one of the things that I remember it did for me, being a little bit more shy than you were, coming up, is it helped to bring me out of my shell because you were sort of forced to. I mean, you didn't have a choice. People were talking to you. You're forced to talk back to them and be nice. And I just remember meeting a lot of people. So that's one thing that helped me bring me out of my shell. And the second one, I guess you would call maybe one of the funnier moments is, how I got my real first job. When I was going in for an interview with Vector Marketing Corporation. Their office used to be in the old First Tennessee Bank building, which is now First Horizon, next to Houston's on Poplar at Mendenhall. And I got there and I had no idea what I was going in for the interview. They don't tell you over the phone, just like when I was a manager, we didn't tell people, goal was to get them in the door. And I just remember the little ad that Steven Sauer pulled out of the paper at a Memphis in May event that we were selling parking places. So when I always go back and I talk about the power of a moment, if Steven hadn't have pulled out that ad, if you hadn't had the parking spaces, my whole life would have been different. It's like said something like $7.25 to start, which was a ton of money back then, double minimum wage. And, I get to the office and tell them who I am. And they said, oh, you have an emergency phone call from Michael Attias. Do you remember that?
Sort of, but keep going.
Well, you called me. I called you back and you said, I forget who it was. One of your girlfriends had tickets to Mike and the Mechanics at Mud Island. We had like third row tickets. And for people that don't remember that band, I think he used to be in the band Genesis with Phil Collins. And you said, you don't know what this is. Just tell them you have an family emergency and you'll come back for an interview. So that's what I did. I left there and met you over at some house. It was some girl that lived over off of near Richland, that area over there in the Richbriar.
I think it was Patty King.
Yes, it was Patty. Right. That's right. Patty
Moss, but now
Patty Moss.
And now she's married. She got remarried. Patty, I don't know her name, but she's like the best person in the world.
Yeah. And
great person.
And we went down to that concert. And then, I think I went back a couple of days later and got the job. But I just remember like who the heck would call me here in a family emergency? And because you were one of the people that actually was encouraging me to go in, hey, at least go in and find out what this is. I mean, I have like I said, I tell people I have the memory, unfortunately, of a herd of elephants, which is a blessing and a curse. But in this case, it's a blessing because it was just a funny moment that I left that interview and ended up coming back and getting hired and ended up being with that company for 8 years. So, but yeah, you called and we went to that concert that night. Yeah, it was really funny. Michael, I know you did really well at Corky's. You made some great money waiting tables there. Right after you finished school at the University of Memphis, you decided that you were going to, go into that business, and you opened up, one of the first Corky's franchises in Nashville area. You talked about how just a few minutes ago you had a partner. What led you to the decision to want to do that and go out on your own?
I think you need to take a step back. You know, there's a saying, you need to thank God for unanswered prayers, because there are things, my mom was always a victim, always like, oh, this bad thing happened to me. Oh, your father, we left France, we had a good life there. It's like, okay, I think we can all agree probably growing up in the United States was a better opportunity for me than being in France. And, I was disappointed I didn't get that job in, working at Oak Hall or at Cecil's. But if I didn't start in the restaurant business, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Right.
And if you think about the progression, work for Corky's, and then it's like, okay, I went and got a job working for Vital Records Control. They stored boxes of papers, records for doctors' offices, businesses. And I think in sales, you have to do things you believe in and you love. I fucking hated that job. I mean, it's like, who cares about old records? Now, I know people who love it. I have a friend I was in a business group with here. He was very successful. He got bought out by Vital Records. I love my bosses. I learned a lot from them. And I just got married, just bought a house in Cordova. So imagine you're starting your life and then your boss comes in and says, hey, Michael, you haven't been making your numbers. Do you need another month to make your numbers? And I go, no, you should probably just fire me today. And
I never even knew about that job. Never.
Yeah. And he said, hey, I'm going to give you a month's severance pay. So I took everything in a box, one of the boxes we stored records in, and I went in my car and I cried, probably more from relief that I didn't have to do that job anymore. And I knew Corky's was franchising, and I knew I could go back and wait tables and make great money at Corky's.
Sure.
And I remember Jeff Lichterman and I were having lunch somewhere off Rains where I was working. And I was talking with him about, do I really want to go in the restaurant business and be a manager and work nights and weekends? And I was talking, I said, well, you know what, if I build a chain of restaurants, I won't be doing that. I'll have people doing that. And my friend David Kahn had built, opened up a bunch of Blockbusters. So he was sort of a indirect mentor to me, seeing how he built his business. And so I said, yeah, I think I'll go in and do it that way, not treat myself as a businessman in the restaurant business, not a restaurant person. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I went to Don and said, hey, I know you're franchising. I'll work. Can I wait tables for half the day and I'll work for free half the day? Because I didn't know anything about cooking, managing, never opened or run a restaurant. And so imagine how many people would go to a business owner today and say, hey, I'm going to work 8 hours and get paid in 8 hours for free to learn your business. Nobody does that.
No one.
And I remember Joel Stork, who's now a partner in Corky's. He and I waited tables together. We were good friends in Memphis State and waiting tables together. And I wrote on the back of a comment card, 1 year from today, I'll own my own barbecue restaurant, signed it and dated it. It was like 11/1/91. And Don had me work on his operations manual for franchising and had me help open one of the first franchises. And I was learning the business. And I was from the school of thought that if you ask 100 people anything, one person will say yes. I mean, how do cults work? The guy's going to get people to drink Kool-Aid. I mean, proves it exactly. You're going to drink cyanide Kool-Aid, follow some crazy guy. You can get anyone to say anything. So I knew that there were a lot of successful businessmen came into Corky's to eat. And one day in April, it didn't even take me 30, 35 people. This guy and his wife came in. They were in town for a wedding from Nashville. Said, hey, what do you know about this? And there was an ad in Nashville paper promoting selling franchises. And I said, oh, we're selling franchises. And I'm going with one of the first franchises. And then talked to him, for a long time that day when they were eating lunch. He called me over the weekend, asked me some questions. That next Wednesday, Wesley Weeks' father, who was selling franchises, he and I drive up, stay at the Hampton Inn on West End Avenue, and I had to share a room with his father, and he smoked like a chimney. It was the worst night's sleep I've ever gotten. But he backed me on the first franchise, wrote $1 million check, and I'd never opened, run, or managed.
Wow. That's unbelievable. Wesley Weeks that went to Ridgeway?
Yeah, he's an attorney in Nashville. I saw him not too long ago. I mean, everybody's interrelated in Memphis. So, and what's interesting, I did not go into Corky's wanting to get rich. I went into Corky's saying this man has entrusted me with $1 million of his retirement money. I am not going to go down as the man who lost it. And he never worked in the restaurant a day, never lifted a finger. He'd come in once a month and eat lunch with me, go over numbers, talk. One of his favorite things, if I had an idea, he goes, oh, I'm glad I thought of that. It was sort of a running joke.
Right.
Great guy. He never made less than like a 25% return on his money, cash on cash every year. And in the restaurant business, there's an old joke. A guy speaks to his class at Harvard Business School. He goes, well, we'd like to introduce so-and-so. He's a millionaire in the restaurant business. And so somebody raises their hand and he goes, what were you before you were a millionaire in the restaurant business? He goes, I was a multimillionaire. So it's known as people invested and they lose their money. It's a tough business. So,
right.
But for me, besides, being a great opportunity for me, it was a laboratory. I learned direct mail and direct marketing through a guy named Jay Abraham. And again, it's just how all these things take you different places. There was an ad in Inc. magazine. It was 25 pages. Attend his seminar, and it was like $5,000 for a 3-day seminar, which back in 1992, $5,000 was like saying you're going to spend $15,000 on a marketing. It's a lot of money. And I got an audio cassette. It had some ideas and I couldn't afford it. So I took the free ideas I could sort of garner off the tape and I started doing it. And I started building catering sales with direct marketing, and our catering sales, we became a third of our business. We did $1 million a year in catering out of a 104-seat restaurant. And then I started teaching other restaurants how to get in the catering business and speaking and consulting. And I know you opened up with that, but I don't do that anymore because I don't want to work.
Right.
Like, I'm not saying I wouldn't get on a plane and consult or whatever, but like, it's not my business model anymore. It's all about the software. And, but that definitely got me a following in the restaurant industry. And I consulted for Domino's Pizza. They brought me in and consulted about catering. That's probably the biggest client I ever had. And all the major food houses would bring me into their shows, speak. I spoke at the National Restaurant Association multiple times. Pizza Expo, which is if you love pizza, it's the best show you'll ever go to. I took Steven Sauer one year, who's a mutual friend of ours. And he goes, oh my God, it's like row of eating pizza and pasta and wings. It's like, it is a pizza lover's dream to go to there. So,
$3 million in sales and $1 million of it was in catering. That's incredible.
Well, I don't like businesses where you don't have control of building sales. Brick and mortar businesses, when you open a restaurant, I had a restaurant in Huntsville, Alabama. We opened a second one. I knew the day we opened, we were going to go out of business. We did a lot of catering, but it wasn't enough to make up for a bad location and where we put it. Catering, we were very proactive in selling catering, and I'll share some ideas with you that I had. But one of them is we would drive up to 2 hours to cater, because if you're in Jonesboro, Arkansas, right, and you have a plant with 1,000 employees, who's going to feed 1,000 people?
Right.
The guy that has a little hole in the wall barbecue, he can't handle that. So we would drive 2 hours and we would get lots of events for big companies and factories, 3 shifts. We would go feed them, lunch, dinner, and in the middle of the night. And yeah, it doesn't pay to feed 25 people in the middle of the night, but when you get 1,000 people, it does. You build that into the cost. And I remember this was like my favorite. I learned direct mail and marketing from Jay Abraham initially, and then a guy named Dan Kennedy. I print, and I got this idea from someone. There's no such thing as an original idea. It's just you're stealing someone else's idea and you're putting your twist on it.
Right.
So I wrote a sales letter. It was 1 page, and it was a black background, white letters, and I printed it on transparency film on my laser printer, so it looked like an X-ray. And I put it in an oversized envelope with a like a lime green sticker that says X-ray film, do not bend. And we sent it to all the HR managers at the hospitals in Middle Tennessee. Cost me $20 to send out the promotion. I booked over $17,000 in catering.
Wow.
And then we were probably the first people in the restaurant industry to target Black Friday. Like, I didn't even know what Black Friday was as a kid. And one year we had like the first year I was in business, day after Thanksgiving, we had like a 200-person order from Dillard's the day after Thanksgiving. And I was like, this doesn't make sense. So I called the person up and I said, hey, I'm just curious, why did y'all order all this food the day after Thanksgiving? Go, oh, it's Black Friday and we're busy with the sales and whatever. And I go, oh, light bulb went off. If one person needs it, they all need it. And this was before the internet. So I literally the next year, I drove to all the shopping areas in Nashville. It was 5 at the time. And I had a legal pad and I wrote down every big store, Dillard's, Penny's, Target, Best Buy. I had like 45 stores. I used the yellow pages. If anybody, there's my kids, I don't even know if they know what the yellow pages are. You didn't have the internet to look up anything. Then I would call and go, who's in charge of HR, blah, blah, blah. I mailed them a letter, and we booked like $6,000 in drop-off catering off $45 investment. Then the biggest ever got was $12,000 in drop-off catering. And remember, that was at like less than $4 a person. So today that would be like having a $25,000, $30,000 drop-off day. I mean, it was huge for us. So we didn't wait for business to come to us. We went after CPAs for tax prep. We went after labor unions for Labor Day picnics. We went after all the big employers for company picnics, holiday parties. We went after all these niches. And then I started teaching other people how to do it. And I had a good side hustle selling a $1,500 course. And I had a newsletter for 10 years. I wrote a newsletter and audio. Before there were podcasts, my friend, I would interview people over the phone and send out a tape recorder, and then it was a CD.
Very cool. Yeah. Now that you mentioned it, I'd forgotten about that, but now I do remember that. You do.
I might have interviewed you for one. I don't know. Could have.
What led you to your decision to, finally get out of the quote unquote restaurant ownership business and venture into, I guess what we call restaurant technology industry?
Well, again, very interesting story. I was just burnt out on the restaurant business. Had an opportunity to package a deal for me to get out of it. And I wanted to focus on the coaching, the consulting. And then I knew eventually the tech after I sold the restaurant, because one of my mentors, Dan Kennedy, said there's nothing worse than an A player playing in a C game. So, you think about A-Rod, great baseball player, right? All these, Michael Jordan, his talent would have been wasted in the European League, right? So you got to play, if you're an A player, you got to play in an A arena. And I like business, my business models that I like residual income, where every month they're paying you money. What you're doing with Sleepy Z's masonry right now. Every month you start with 0 on your books and you got to get new clients, right? When you were selling Cutco mattresses, you start with 0. Well, 2 things. One, every month I start with all my sales in the bank because people need my software and they're paying me for it. Number two is there's a big pain of disconnect. Whereas if you're using software to run your business and relying on it, how quick are you to get rid of that? It's like your cell phone.
Yeah.
If all of a sudden Verizon, AT&T, whoever doubled the cost of your cell phone bill and everybody across the board doubled their bill, are you going to turn in your cell phone? You can't function without it, right? So there's this, and it's a very steep learning curve, and then you're done. Like once you got your phone and you knew how to, set up your voicemail, do whatever, are you calling up Verizon every week? Hey, I got a question on it. No. So once we get a client in software, we teach them how to use it. Our job is done, and they send us checks every month because they need it to run their business. Now I have a bigger job. I have to make sure that I have good support and service and systems, and we keep developing the product to make it more and more valuable, but I don't start the bank every month with zero. So if I decide that I'm going to go on vacation for a couple of weeks, it still runs. I mean, it's all systematized, and I don't like, and we're not limited geographically, right? You can sell software in all 50 states and Canada,
Right.
where you're limited in how far you're going to go to do masonry. When you had a mattress store, how far is somebody going to drive to buy a mattress? 30 minutes, 45 minutes, maybe an hour. You ain't getting people from Nashville driving to Memphis to buy a freaking mattress.
Right.
Now if you've gone into mail order mattresses and internet, that's a whole nother thing. So I've always had the idea for this because in the catering software space, nobody had software for restaurant catering. It's a fast type of order taking. When your sister got married, they could spend 3 hours putting together a proposal because it was an expensive catering. When somebody needs to order $200 worth of box lunches, they need to get on and off the phone. Different skill set. I actually had the idea for this software when I worked for Don Peltz and Corky's, because I've always was an idea person. And I told him he should hire someone to write this, because I would sit there and I was rolling silverware, and the girls in the office would be, what's your name? What's your company? What's your address? What's your credit card number? That's the same people 3 times a week, the same freaking thing. It's like, why, if I knew how to program in DBase 3 plus, I could have written a simple program. And then Robbie, the manager, every afternoon, she'd sit in her office for an hour, and she has, we call it the pink and blue sheets. The blue sheets were the meats, the pink sheets were the side. She'd write down Zellner, 11 a.m., 5 pounds of pork, 5 pounds of beef, Smith, 20 slabs of ribs, 10 pounds of pork, and give it to the guys in the kitchen. I'm like, you realize if you had a piece of software, you could just spit that out in 2 seconds and hand it to the kitchen. So I had the idea when I was in college, and then I just bootstrapped it. I was divorced, started my life all over again. I found a guy in the tech space that had an online ordering company. 2 of my competitors, I tried to buy their software to license it for restaurants, and they turned me down. They've since come and tried to buy me, which I find pretty funny. They're good people. I found a guy in the online ordering space, and in food, I said, hey, and he also had a software development shop. I bootstrapped it with 30 grand. He built my first version, and I literally bootstrapped it for nothing. I turned down $100,000 in funding when it launched. The guy who just sold his software company for 12 million saw it. It was a social friend. And he called me the next day. He goes, hey, I love your software. I want to put in 100 grand for 10%. And I turned him down because when you accept outside funding, there's 2 things you need to keep in mind. Do you know how to grow your business to accept that money? Because you need the fuel to fuel your growth, right? Because if I gave you $100,000 in the masonry business to grow your business, and you didn't have a growth strategy that was replicable, you'd blow through the 100 grand, and now you'd have a partner that owns 10% of your business you have to answer to.
Right.
So I knew that I didn't know what I didn't know. And 2 is I don't like to answer to people. I don't play well with others. And so my lifestyle is not one that I'm going to go in at 7 in the morning, work till 7 at night. If I decide that I'm going to dick around this afternoon and go ride my bike or walk on the beach, I don't want a partner saying, hey, our sales are down. Why are you dicking around? Like, I don't want to answer it. I don't need the money. I need the lifestyle more than the money. I don't work for money. I'm comfortable,
Right.
but so that's how it started. And literally it took 5-6 years before I was, making just decent money. But, software builds a snowball, and now we're in a place, things have happened in the market. We're now attracting enterprise clients, which are people with hundreds of locations. So our business is growing and developing, and I've got a great team and great systems. And, I love what I do because I get to wake up and invent new software, and then somebody else gets to build it.
You have a really good quote I want to read. You said, quote, "My software company CaterZen was created out of my frustration with the lack of a viable catering software platform to address the specific needs of operators," unquote. And you talked about how you spent hundreds of thousands of dollars over 10 years figuring out how to make it work. You had the idea, obviously, you said, for a long time. This was going to work no matter what. I mean, I know you and your determination and your mindset, you were going to figure out how to make this happen.
Well, I'm very lucky that I wasn't in a fast growing business that attracted big outside investments, because speed is important. The old joke I have is, I started when I was 16 washing dishes, overnight success after 40 years. I'm very good at innovating and inventing things, and we've done things that nobody else does in our software that's really cool and cutting edge, and we continue to add things. And when you don't have a lot of overhead, like we didn't have offices, everybody worked out of their house. We do things that are very streamlined, yet we operate bigger than any of our competitors because we're very results focused and systems focused. And the feedback we get and the reviews we get is it's phenomenal software. Plus, I think it's because I'm left-handed. I do my mazes backwards, and I think backwards on a problem. So I tend to think, as the user going through how to use the software, I don't want to go to 3 screens to enter an order. Like, I don't want to go to one screen to enter the customer, then go to another to enter the order, and another to add an address or a credit card. It all happens seamlessly. It needs to flow very effortlessly because you're dealing with restaurant employees. You're not dealing with tech people.
Right.
And so we're very good at taking complex things and making them simple, and then taking things that take people a long time. And we're in the business of giving people time, right? So I'll give you a perfect example. We're not the first people who ever invented this, for sure. But, we have a way you can bill people for their catering, which is a great way to grow catering sales, because a lot of corporations don't want to give you a credit card or cut a check. You bill them. And so we have a report. You can pull up who owes you what money, right? And so at the beginning of the month, you should pull up, okay, Sleepy Z's owes us $250. It's within 30 days, so we don't have to call them. XYZ owes us, they're 90 days past due, we need to call them. So now we've made it where the report goes to the customer automatically, and they get hyperlinks to their invoices. They can pay online. So we just make it easier and easier. We had a customer come to us, and they told us before they came to us, they lost $50,000 a year before in collections. And the first year they were with us, they only lost $5,000 uncollectible. And it's because they didn't have a good way to keep up with who owed them what and how to manage it, right? So my software paid for itself just off that one feature.
Yeah.
And I got another customer. We have, everybody, I'm not the guy who invented Uber. And so, you can track a delivery, you can track Uber Eats, where your food is, where the Uber driver is. We built that technology into our software. So if you're ordering food from Corky's for your crew, you could see if they're using our software, you can see where the delivery driver is and how far they are. So you don't have to call the restaurant owner and say, "Hey, Barry, where's my food?"
Right.
And then we made it where, every time you go someplace, it says, "Do you want to leave a tip?" So we left, if they want to put that tip. We had a customer, just that one tip feature generated $2,000 a month in tips for their driver. So I gave them $24,000 of free payroll every year just for this one button, right?
Yeah.
And so that, you can attract better drivers because their drivers are making more money.
Yeah.
And the customers are happier because they know where the delivery driver is. And we also allow them to take a picture of the setup. So it does 2 things. One, it's a training thing. So if you're a new driver for me, I could say, "Did you set up the table the way you were trained to do it, and everything looks neat and orderly. And when the customer calls, I remember somebody says, yeah, a customer called and said, hey, where's our orange juice? And, they look bad. They think the restaurant didn't deliver, and they found out later some employee took the orange juice. Well, if I send you a picture and show you the orange juice is on the table, you're not blaming the restaurant, right? So all these little things that we're doing to make the money, save the money, that's what I geek out on. Like even now we're working, it's tough to find delivery drivers. We're working with a company that can provide third-party drivers. So if you can't find a driver, literally you hit a button and you can get a driver scheduled for tomorrow, next week, right now, show up at your door and deliver that catering for you. So you're not turning away business. So if I can help a restaurant pick up another 1,000 a week and lost sales because they don't have drivers, I'm more valuable. So that's what I geek out on, is all these cool things that we gotta do.
And you've talked about this a little bit, but how would you describe just the core services of products that's offered by CaterZen, and what sets CaterZen apart from other companies in the restaurant catering software business, your competitors?
We really don't have competitors. It's sort of like, I think everybody needs to pick a lane, right? There's a lot of catering software solutions on the market, but I think what we do really well is the restaurant, what I call corporate drop-off, right? Box lunches, platters, self-service buffets. That's our bread and butter client. And it's just a different order taking process. It's a lot quicker. You need online ordering because a lot of these customers want to order online. We have that built in our platform. So we focus on that. But we also realize there's a lot of full service caterers that do drop-off catering, and none of the other catering software companies really focus on drop-off catering. So if you do full service catering and drop-off, ours can do both. And then we started getting into party rooms because a lot of restaurants have party rooms. So now you can manage party rooms, full service caterings, drop-off caterings. So we've got our lane. There's other guys and all they do is contract food service. So if that's university or a big corporate cafeteria that's being managed by Sodexo, Marriott internally, their software is better targeted to them. There's some that focus on grocery store catering, right? And there's some that do what we call corporate catering, like weddings, bar mitzvahs, big corporate events where it's staffed, and they could be $10, $20, $30,000 events, right? So we own our space. Rarely do we lose to somebody, because if we lose, they need a solution we don't have, more than there's somebody who directly competes with us. We probably lose to pen and paper more than we lose to anything.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people that are just old school that don't want to change.
Yeah.
I saw a picture of you with Mark Cuban. Was it just a quick meet or a picture, or did you have a minute or two to pick his brain?
No. So one of my really good friends, her name is Robin Robbins. Very interesting story how we met. So when I started writing my newsletter, I was a big reader, read courses, listened to tapes. I think social media has made my ADD so strong that I can't sit down and read for more than 5 minutes, which is a shame. But I used to get Dan Kennedy's newsletter, and I'd read it the minute it came in. I'd just sit in my chair and read every word. And I sent him a copy of my newsletter that I was writing to restaurant owners to subscribe, and he loved it, and he reprinted it in his newsletter. So it's sort of like, imagine your mentor was to, if Howard Stern was going to play a clip from your podcast, it would be like, wow, this is like such a big honor. And so I was doing a booth at the Nashville Business Expo, and this redheaded girl comes up to me and she goes, "Hey, you Michael Attias, whose newsletter was in Dan Kennedy's newsletter?" She goes, "Yeah." She goes, "Oh, I'm a big Dan Kennedy fan." And the people who follow Dan Kennedy, it's almost like a cult, because it's a different kind of marketing, and we all go to the same seminars, and we just became fast friends. And I knew her when her and her husband literally didn't have two nickels to rub together. She got fired shortly after we met, and she started doing she built a lead generation course, how to generate leads with direct marketing. And she never she got hooked up with this company called Kaseya. She did a webinar and she started selling a lot. And she said, oh, I'm just going to help IT companies. And she built this huge coaching. She has a trade publication now. Like, I'm not going to quote her numbers, but crazy big business. And she started, and she has a GED. Her dad left the family. They were homeless. I mean, this is like, of all my friends, I'm probably the most proud of her, what she's built. Now, she works harder than I would ever want to work. Like, I would not want to work that hard, but hats off to her. So when she does these events, she's brought in Buzz Aldrin. She's brought in all these sharks and, really famous people. She's got, oh my God, Jordan Peterson speaking at her event in April. I've had dinner with the Dirty Jobs guy, Mike Rowe, like a dinner with like 6 people. I've met a lot of really cool people. Kevin O'Leary and I've hung out. I've had lunch next to him. I've driven to and from the airport with him. We've shot the shit. I mean, he's really cool. He's my favorite shark. So she got invited by them to go see a taping. And she goes, hey, you want to go out there and hang out? I said, sure. So I flew out, hung out with her and some of her people. And then we had dinner with the guy who does negotiations. He was a former hostage negotiator. I don't know if you've seen him. He does a master class. Chris Vaughn, I think so. And he's got some great stories. So I've rubbed shoulders. So I was on the set of Shark Tank and I took pictures with all the sharks.
Cool.
So it was pretty cool. I mean, it was pretty cool to get a rub shoulders because of her, not because I know any of these people.
Yeah, I like Kevin O'Leary too. Yeah, he's interviewed all the time on television.
Yeah, I had dinner with the Hulk, Lou Ferrigno, at the Palm, and he was telling everybody that he was getting the intercochlear implant to help with his hearing. So I heard about that before anybody heard about it. Just a lot of, most of these celebrities are just very down to earth, cool, laid back people.
Yeah. I've luckily had the chance to interview, several of them on my podcast, and I found that to be true. They're just nice people. Yeah. Yeah. Very, very nice people. So, just like we talked about, I'm not afraid to ask anybody. And so, when I reach out to them and they said yes, I brought them on. It wasn't like, I felt like nervous or anything. They were just nice and very nice and gave me their time, which, it's good to know
it's
that.
It's usually the posers that are the biggest assholes.
Yeah. Right. There's a really good quote. It saved us a ton of time on multiple processes when we've got one team taking the order, another team routing our drivers to deliver it, and we have another team that's cooking the product and preparing it. CaterZen is able to read between all three, and it really makes it a cohesive system that they can utilize, unquote. That was by Heather Autry, sales manager of Jack Stack Barbecue. She said about your system. It sounds like, one of the things I used to say about Cutco, it saves you time, money, and a lot of aggravation. It sounds like the CaterZen does the same for your clients too.
Well, what we really want to do is anything that has to do with their catering business, we want to take care of for them. Because, you want to make yourself so invaluable that that what you charge them is a bargain, right?
Right.
And technology is something that, the right technology you never want to get rid of. First of all, it's tough to get a customer because whatever people are using, they're hesitant to change. But if you can get them to change and come to you and you do such a good job, they're not leaving over money, right?
Right.
Great. We charge $229 a month for one location. Are you going to switch your system that's running your whole business, has all your customers, all your information? Even if it was free, do you want to save $200 when you have this system that runs your business? No. I mean, you'd be a fool because, you can't compare it to anything else. So we just keep trying to make ourselves more and more and more valuable so they can't leave us, right? It's almost like a legalized drug dealer. Software, if your business is reliant to run it day to day, oh my God, the pain of disconnect is so high that they're not leaving you. And so once you've been around long enough, it builds a momentum and, there's a snowball that builds. And, as I've always told our customers, my favorite Ray Kroc line is, we innovate quicker than our competitors can copy. So my job is to listen to my customers, look at the marketplace, what technology is being used in another industry. So AI is a big buzzword now, right? Everybody's talking about AI this, AI that. So that's on our development board, is if I can give our clients AI interfaces to analyze their data. So right now I could look at sales data and say, who hasn't ordered from me in 90 days, right? Here's 50 companies that haven't ordered. But don't you want to know why? Are they ordering for fewer people? Are they spending less money per person? Are they ordering less frequently, right? That gives me insight to a customer and maybe how to approach them. What about, you ran a sales organization for years, and all you could look at was raw data, right? You could say, oh, Michael sold more than Susie, but you need to really look at AI allows you to analyze, maybe Susie's a better salesperson than Michael, and her order value is higher. She sells twice as much per order. I need to get her in front of more people. And I need to teach Michael how to sell more. He's got all the appointments in the world, but he's not a good salesperson. He's walking away with $300 an order instead of $700 an order, right? So to be able to have that information for salespeople, you've got catering salespeople selling your catering. I want to know who is leaving money on the table, and who needs to be coached which way, right? Maybe my top salesperson in dollars needs to be taught how to take more time and sell more. And maybe the person who isn't selling as much, they don't have as big a book of business, or they don't have as many inbound calls, and I need to help them generate more opportunities so they can sell more. So that's where AI comes in, is business intelligence. So we're always thinking, what are the big boys doing? What are these other things doing? Because relatively speaking, there's not enough money in the restaurant catering software space where a big company like, a Google or somebody wants it. It's a very small niche. So that's advantage to me. And I've always liked businesses where you could sort of take big ideas and apply them to a small pond, and you're going to reap bigger rewards.
What are some of the biggest challenges that you've had over the years and that you've been able to overcome in the business?
I know you're not going to believe this, but really not many. Probably the biggest one is scaling. We still haven't figured out, like, okay, how can we spend X and get Y in sales? Because the advantage of our business is when you get them, they're never leaving. The problem is it's tough to find people who wake up and say, I need catering software. The biggest thing is Google, and we rank high in Google for organic search, but it's not like you can find, we're not an add-on solution to a piece of software like, hey, we'll get you better open rates on your emails or help you write better emails. So you're saying, I'm spending money in email marketing, let me try this tool to see if it's going to do better. We're running someone's whole business, so it's very difficult. But besides that, I've always, even when I had Corky's, I've been big into systems. So we have everything very documented. We everything from when you get a contract, I find problems. If it's a problem that bothers me, I find a solution. So there's a thing called sales friction. What is holding you back from making a sale, right? So for instance, let's take Cutco. Well, maybe one of the sales frictions is you had to take and process the credit card back where you got, when you got back to the store. Well, imagine, I don't know if they do it now, I would have card readers, boom, got it, it's done, the transaction's done. I don't have to call the customer back and go, hey, your card didn't go through.
Right.
That's sales friction. We used to send people PDFs that they would have to print, fill out the contract, scan, email back. That's a lot of processes. We were one of the first software companies to adopt electronic signature contracts. So now all you have to do is click, sign, you're done, right? You can fill out an electronic contract in 2 minutes. You're done. You don't have to print it. I don't have a printer. Oh, how do I scan this? Susie, could you scan this for me? So you're chasing somebody down. we would have a problem with booking appointments. Like you'd say, oh, Michael, I'm interested in your software. Great. When are you available? I email you back. I can do it Tuesday. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm out of town Tuesday. When else? You play this ping pong. And what happens is now all of a sudden, Michael Zellner is worried about something else. Like, hey, your contractor calls up and say, hey, this contractor didn't show up. This stuff didn't show up. Can you come bid today? Well, now you're solving a problem and software is not your problem. So now we were one of the first people to use electronic calendar links, where you just go in and you pick when you want to meet with me, and it's on my calendar and it's got the Zoom link in it. I don't have to do anything, right? And it reminds you. So anything that becomes a barrier to making money or running operations, we turn to software to solve it. Like in the beginning, we would answer support tickets one at a time and go, okay, this is stupid. We need ticketing software. We need support articles. We need training videos. We used to do one training program and we found out that wasn't as efficient. So we went to a more sophisticated system where we'd say, hey, here's 13 things the software can do. What are your A, B, and C priorities? And then we do multiple training sessions to make sure you're using it as quickly as possible, because the quicker you're using it and successful, you're not going to drop out, right?
Right.
At one point, we were helping people build catering sales. And we would do their websites, their marketing materials. And I learned this from somebody: you're much better off helping a winner become a bigger winner than a loser become a winner. And I don't mean that somebody's a loser, but if you're not catering, the inertia it takes to start something, all the things you started in your life where you might have, even Cutco. I remember you didn't do anything for a year, right? So that to get that off that inertia is difficult. It's impossible. So if I've got 100 restaurant owners trying to make them a Michael Attias to pick up the phone and call and sample and do all these things, it's impossible. But if I can take a winner and give him a tool to make him a bigger winner, he's going to invest in that tool to give him that edge, right? Like every athlete's looking, how can I be a hundredth of a second quicker? How can I jump a quarter of an inch higher? How can I practice this layup in such a way that's going to give me that little edge, right? So we're in the business of giving people an edge because they're winners and they want to be bigger winners. But trying to turn losers into winners is very, very difficult. It's that the inertia there is so difficult.
It is. A lot of people, have ingrained patterns of behavior, and it's change is hard in anything we do. So that's, yeah, absolutely.
So we stopped helping people build their catering sales. We have free resources, and we'll send you to consultants. I don't want to focus on hoping you're 1 out of 100 that's successful to use my software. I want to find the successful people who look at my software. When somebody tells me, oh my God, you are so much better than what we're using now, we can't wait to get over here. Or, oh my God, every time you're talking to a customer or a prospect and they're, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, that you're going to impact them to be even greater, right?
Right.
But I don't want to teach somebody how to do something.
Right. As I mentioned at the beginning, you're also an author. You've written a few books that I'm aware of. The first one called Cater or Die, the step-by-step plan for doubling your cater profits, which is available on Amazon. And the second, I believe, is an ebook called Catering Multipliers, the 17 no-cost laws of catering sales growth. What made you decide to do that? Because I know writing books has to be very time consuming.
It's not.
Really?
Not if you know how to. If you don't work hard like me, it's easy. So okay. I think we need to go back. I've only written one book that's been on Amazon. It's self-published. Lewis Jordan Publishing or Jordan Lewis Publishing. It's my kids' names. Self-published. You can self-publish on anybody can publish on Amazon and put it on there. You don't write a book for the money. Very few people make money off books. It's a customer acquisition technique, right? So when you write a book about catering for restaurants, guess what? You're the expert. When you hand someone a business card, you're a salesman. Everybody wants to do business with the expert. And so basically I just took together old articles I did and pieced together. If I were going to tell you to write a book, I'd say come up with chapter titles, come up with questions, have somebody interview, transcribe it, have somebody good with English, write it, edit it, a designer, put it on Create Space, which ends up on Amazon, design a book. Even the book titles, you look at what the best titles are selling on New York Times. You know, I think the title that I creatively copied was called Sell or Die. I go, oh, I like that title, Cater or Die. And really for a restaurant, you know, if you don't cater to get those extra sales, you could die, because it's free advertising and it's free money. And then you just look at color designs based on the New York Times bestseller. Look, they did all the hard work.
Yeah.
You know, all these big authors. You don't have to be a genius. The other ones are more like ebooks that we use online as lead generation magnets to get people to raise their hand and say, hey, I need some help with catering. And we're hoping some of those will become customers. So I've written, if you go to my website, there's a lot of free ebooks, and they're just ways to get people to give you their information. Because what I found, there have been people who bought from me 12 years after they've met me, right? They saw me speak in Omaha. They got my newsletter. They're on my mailing list. They've been getting my blog articles for the last 12 years. Then all of a sudden, they're now ready for catering software. And this is what we talked about when I came to talk to you. And the Cutco business is, you were focused on getting the next sale, and you left so much money on the table, not building a database of the buyers. Because if you like Cutco, there's multiple opportunities in your life to buy Cutco, right? I want to buy more pieces. There's a cool new thing that I want from Cutco. I've got my friends' kids getting married. That'd be a great wedding gift. There's my kids, you know, my son just, you know, he bought an apartment. Let me get him 3 pieces of Cutco for his kitchen. You know, each customer could be worth double or triple what they initially spend. But no, the only person getting rich is Cutco, because they're mailing the catalogs and they're contacting those people. And if I was running a Cutco office, the real money is in the repeat.
Right.
So
Long-term vision for CaterZen. Where do you see the company going, evolving, you know, with AI in the future?
well, we talked about AI, and just providing AI tools for our clients, whether it's writing better emails to communicate with their clients or analyzing their business data. Right now, I love what I do. Like I have like the ultimate, I wouldn't call it a job, a career, a lifestyle. I get to wake up it's sort of like a grandparent, right? I don't have to take care of the kids every day. I don't have to run the day to day. I'm involved and I oversee what happens and make sure everything runs well from a high level, but I get to develop the product and the marketing and the vision, and I get to do that, and I get to interact with some really great people on that level. So that keeps me challenged. And the problem when you sell a business is most businesses are sold because someone's either really tired, right? Like, oh my God, I'm working 80 hours a week doing this. I can't deal with it anymore. I need to sell it and get out. Or they see there's a change in the marketplace, right? Like, hey, I'm not going to sell mattresses anymore. Everybody's going to either Costco, they're buying them online. They're cheaper. They're just as good or better. Why do I want to be in a showroom and have all this overhead? I need to get the hell out. I see the writing on the wall. Well, I don't see any writing on the wall for me to get out. And by the time you sell a business, you pay your taxes, and then you invest it, you end up taking a major pay cut, right?
Right.
So why, and I don't work hard. I get to do what I love. It's like being a grandparent. You get to focus on all the good things. The grandkid comes over, you get to play with them, and you send them home with their dirty diapers to their parents. You don't have to deal with, you know, doing your homework and getting out of bed and all that other BS, right? So
Right.
I'm in a great place in my life, and my kids are all grown up. They're off the payroll. So I get to travel and go see the world, and because I can run my company from anywhere. So right now, and until I see some tea leaves that tell me I need to pivot, I'm just enjoying it.
All right. And this goes into my next thing I want to talk about. Early on in your life, you did work very hard, and now you work very smart. Just like you just said, it's allowed you to run your business from anywhere. You know, tell us, first of all, if you could turn the video around and show us the beachfront condo in Seagrove Beach, Florida, where you are, so people can see the view that you're looking at, which is just unbelievable. Look at that. It's unbelievable. Gorgeous, gorgeous view. And I know you're very proud of that. And then a few years ago, you purchased a home. Is it Uvita, Costa Rica.
Uvita, Costa Rica.
Uvita, Costa Rica. I've seen pictures there too. Incredible. Tell us, just a little bit about both places and, the kind of fun that you have when you're there and just the relaxing part too.
Well, when you tell people you have three houses, it sounds pretentious,
Sure.
and it's not as impressive as people would think. So, most people, think about the people that are, and like I tell people, I'm far from rich. I'm comfortable. Rich is you have a private jet. So if I
Yeah.
ever have a private jet, you can say your friend Michael's rich. I'm just comfortable. And I think, but I am wealthy in the fact that I control my time, where the richest people have no control over their time. Other people control their time. So my time is my most valuable asset. I can get on a plane, go visit my kids. I never miss anything when my kids were growing up, even in being in the restaurant business. So my time is my most valuable asset. Well, you think about all the people, that have money in Memphis. They live in some big house in the cloisters or whatever. And I'm a single guy. My kids are all grown. I don't need a 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 square foot house with a 3-car garage and a bonus room and a pool, whatever. It's just me, right? So I could have bought one big house, or I could have 3 little houses. So, I bought my house in East Nashville years ago. It was cheap. Costa Rica was cheap when I bought it. And my first condo I bought down in Florida 5.5 years ago. It was cheap. And, it appreciated, and I was able to get into this place and put in a little bit more money. And I've taken up decorating. I enjoy, decor. So for me, it was more of a, what do I want for my lifestyle? I can be down here in an hour on Southwest. I keep a car here. I love it here. I decided to be in Costa Rica. My friend and his wife bought down there. I've been going down there for years. One year I was sick in a hotel room in DC during Christmas, hanging with my kids. And I'm like, I can't deal with another cold winter. I got on the internet, found a house in Costa Rica. It was inexpensive. I remodeled that for a year. I'm starting to Airbnb it a little bit, but I also do home exchange. So I swap out homes with people. So yeah, it's really awesome. So you put it's like $250 a year. You can put one or all your houses on there. So I've got my 3 places on there, and people will say, hey, we got a place in Australia. We want to use your place in Costa Rica. Do you want to? So I get 3 or 4 emails a day. So in the last year, I went to Paris for 3 weeks. I went to LA for a week. I went to Breckenridge for 4 days with my kids. I might go to LA. I'm going to LA in April. I might have a trade there. And then I'm going to spend 10 days in Paris and 2 weeks in London this summer in July, all by trading. So there's no cost if I had spent that on Airbnbs in those places, I would have probably spent 20 grand.
Sure.
And I get a cherry pick because you could swap with points, but I get so many offers. Like I could be gone 52 weeks a year just trading out, because you can't stay at all 3 of your places at the same time.
Yeah. I never even knew about that. That's really awesome.
Yeah. So it allows you to go to different places and enjoy some place you might not have gone to. Like I've been offered Vancouver Island in Canada, a house on the Pacific Ocean. Like literally you walk out your door and you fall in the Pacific. I mean, it's drop dead gorgeous places. And you get some places that aren't gorgeous, but if I wanted to, I could be gone 52 weeks a year, just traveling the world, staying in someone else's house.
Very neat. One thing I know about you that you've shared with me that's super important to you, and that you also helped me with in late 2019 when I was in a really bad place mentally, emotionally, physically, and especially financially, is that you're very charitable and you give back. You've told me how important that is to you. You wrote me a check for $6,000, told me not worry about it. It was a gift, which is just one of the nicest things anyone's ever done for me. When did you start giving to charities in your life, and why did you start doing it? Because I know it's not just to make you feel good. It's I know that you're helping a lot of people and causes too.
God, I feel like everything has a story. I remember growing up in Memphis, it's definitely the Bible Belt. And I remember in high school and college having Christian friends talking about tithing. And they would tell stories like, hey, even when I don't have the money, I tithe, because the Lord blesses you back. And I would just look at them like, what the hell are you talking? I know it talks about, we're Jewish and we follow the New Testament. and they talk about giving back and tithing in the fields and all that, but it's really not part of our religious upbringing. We don't tithe every week in our paycheck. We just pay dues once a year to the synagogue.
Sure.
And when people talk about this, like, some of my friends were just so adamant that that was important. And I just couldn't understand the concept. Like, dude, you're giving 10%'s a lot of money. Like, most people don't even save 10%. And then somewhere in my 20s, I think where it really hit in, Dan Kennedy did a wealth attraction seminar. If you go on YouTube, you might be able to find some old videos that someone pirated and put on there. Watch it. And he talks about, like, I'm not trying to get into religious dogma, but I use the word God and the power of the universe interchangeably. I think there is a power in the universe, and our souls are part of the universe, because if you've ever seen someone who's died, like, literally the life is sucked out of them after they're dead, right?
Yeah.
And if I've got a quote on my Vesta board, I don't know if you can see it up there. It says, "Not only are we in the universe is in us." Neil deGrasse Tyson. And it's really true. Like, we are made up of the same molecules and chemicals or whatever in the universe. And so I use God and the power of the universe interchangeably. I think as man, we came up with the term God because we need to make it easy for people to understand. And, I don't want to go down a religious rabbit hole.
Sure.
And I think there's certain laws of the universe that have worked their way into religions, and giving back is very important. So Dan Kennedy's talking about money has a brain, and money gravitates where it's going to do the most good. And he talks about, like, ever since he was however old, every time he had a dollar come in, he might put a nickel in the giving envelope and a nickel in the savings envelope. And it really hit me, if you marry the two concepts of Christians telling me, what, all I know is I don't give because I expect anything in return, but I can't outgive the blessings I get. And Dan Kennedy talking about money goes where it knows it's going to do the best. And maybe it's just my twisted sense of looking at things, but have you noticed that most people who have money are the most generous people? Like, St. Jude isn't built on $20 donations. It's built on people who give $20 million, right?
Yeah.
And most of the greatest things created in this world is because some rich person wrote a check. Carnegie did the libraries, Bill Gates, he's doing things to cure malaria and clean water. I mean, there is a reason they have been blessed with this wealth, I believe, is that the universe says, I can trust this person with this money. They're going to be a good steward, and they're going to give back. And I believe I've been blessed because I'm a good steward of that, and I take that responsibility. And we both know people personally that if you gave them $1 million tomorrow, they would not do one good thing for somebody else, and they would piss through that money. It's sort of like the curse of the lottery. If you can't manage $20,000 a year in income, you're not going to manage 2 million.
Right.
And so I believe that I don't do it because I expect anything in return. I do it because I feel like it's an obligation, but I have been blessed beyond blessings. And I do believe that people who give, it does more for the giver than the recipient, whether you give of your time or your money. And I think you have an obligation to give back if you've been blessed. And if not, I feel sorry for you,
I took the shorter tour, about a 45-minute tour of St. Jude about 7 years ago. I was down there with one of the radio stations I was advertising with at the time. And they said, and I'm sure it's more now, but $2.6 million a day to run that hospital. So you got to figure, obviously it's more now, but that's right. Obviously those big donations are super, super important. And the small ones too, though, too. I'm sure they add up too.
And you could talk to anybody who's a fervent Christian who tithes, or even the rich people. It's a strategic thing, but not expecting anything in return. And the reason I was going to make a gift to charity at the end of the year anyway. You just happened to catch me first. Not that you're a charity case, but I'm not going to lend money to a friend, because when you lend money to a friend or family member, it changes the nature of the relationship. I'm not co-signing for anybody. I'm either going to make a gift. And like I told you, I said, your only obligation is you have to pay it forward at some point. And if you do or you don't, that's on you.
Right.
And karma is a hell of a teacher, but I can guarantee you can never outgive more. You can never outgive yourself.
I agree. June 15th, 2023, I was recording a podcast just like what we're doing now. I have my phone on silent. I see texts go off, missed food calls too, because it was right next to me. And a few of those were from you, because you were in Memphis that weekend and invited me to join you and your dad and our friend Steven Sauer, his children, to go down to the rendezvous. You and your dad picked me up because obviously your dad still lives right down the street from the house I live in here with my mom. And driving downtown, once again, that marketing guru genius mind of yours came through for me. I had the name of the business as Mid-South Masonry LLC. And, you was like, no. You said you did a great job over the years of marketing and branding, Sleepy Z's mattresses, my former business, that I should continue the quote unquote brand and call the business Sleepy Z's Masonry. And then you said you could tie it all together with our slogan, which you came up with, and is, you'll rest easy with us on the job. And I thought it was perfect. So did the several people I ran it past too. And I recently had gotten a fortune cookie. I might have told you this. And it said, quote, an unexpected visitor will bring you good blessings, unquote. I've kept that in my pocket, and another one inside a yarmulke in my pocket for several years. And there's zero doubt in my mind, Michael, that that was talking about you, because you were definitely, number one, you were unexpected, had no idea you were coming in town. And the name has been working out very well for us. It gives me a story to tell, just like you said it would. It's brought up, people go, oh, wait, I bought a mattress from you, or yeah, so and so, and that's what's happened. So I wanted to bring that up because I cannot thank you enough, because there's so many different things I'm going to be able to do with that in the future with the marketing of it. And it's much more catchier and, quirkier and, than just calling it Mid-South Masonry. So I just want to make sure I thank you again.
Well, like I was thinking about this. I was having dinner from somebody from Memphis last night, and your name came up, and I said, oh, I'm getting interviewed on your podcast. And she said, oh, several of my friends have been interviewed on his podcast, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't say this to her. I said, oh, he'll pay, because maybe one day I want a brick pizza oven and I'll make his gas come up. I'll pay for it. But, there might be a chance to pay me back.
Right. And
once you had wood, huh?
Right. And yeah. I also want to mention also that you also got one of your designers to design my business card and logo and everything. And it looks great. So gotten lots of compliments on it. So once again, cannot thank you enough. And you did that, on you, and didn't even charge me for another
I mean,
gift.
it wasn't that much. That wasn't that expensive when you have a designer on staff. But, somebody once asked me, what would you do if money didn't matter? I hang out at Pinewood Social, which is like, they have a bowling alley, they have an outdoor swimming pool, a bar, a restaurant. They have like living room vignettes to sit with your friends and hang out and have appetizers and drink. And then they have this long library table, and I'm there every day when I'm in Nashville working. I like the vibe. I like the people. I see a lot of same people work. I said, if I was going to do something and money didn't matter, I would probably just sit at Pinewood Social and people could buy me a cup of coffee that I would pay for. And I would just sit and help them with their business, because that's the way my brain thinks. Like, I like to think in terms of marketing and strategy. I had a friend of mine, he's expanding his consulting business. It's always been him. His wife's working. They brought the daughter in and they're expanding. And a couple of times I've had some strategic meetings with them. And, keeping your brain sharp, for me, that's fun for me, like solving problems and coming up with things. It's just the way my brain thinks.
Right.
I'll tell you a funny story. Like, God, I got so many funny stories from my youth. Like, I used to live, my parents' first house was on Bayard Drive, which is back near Ridgeway High School, but a little further south, I guess, off Quince,
Yeah.
wherever. Yorkshire Liquors, not far from that area. I don't know what it's called. So that was their first house. And then in the neighborhood, there was a non-Kana creek. And as kids, I mean, who's going to let a 6-year-old go play in a creek, whatever. So I play there, and they're with all the kids in the neighborhood. We'd run through the creek, and it was safe. I mean, it wasn't like deep water, and there were these green rocks, and I was like, I'm like 6 years old. I'm like, oh my God, this is jade. I'm gonna fucking be rich. And I took a bag of jade, and I had my mother take me to the Clark Tower, to the jewelry store, or whatever jewelry store was there. It could have been Yakubian, I don't know. And I was sure, like, man, I hit the mother lode. I'm gonna be rich. And I put the bag of rocks on the thing, surely thinking the guy's gonna just start whipping out the 20s. And he goes, no, it's and whatever rock it was. So I think my whole life I've just sort of had that wide-eyed optimism, and look at things that way.
It's a great kind of mind to have. So I'm very appreciative of it. I want to read something you put on Facebook. It was to your mom. This quote on November 5th. Happy birthday to my mom. 3.5 years ago, she physically left us, but I'm sure she's looking down on all her kids and grandkids. Probably a few head shakes and lots of prideful smiles. If we die and go to heaven or assigned positions, I'm sure she's cooking for God and his angels. I definitely learned my way around the kitchen from her via osmosis. Happy birthday. One thing I remember about your mom, baklava at your house. Tell us about your mom Gabby and your dad David, and how they, obviously you've mentioned earlier about how hard your dad worked, and what you saw, and how do you think
Well,
that helped to shape your life?
one thing that all of my siblings and I took is the work ethic that they saw my parents. So, my mom didn't work until my dad went bankrupt. She went back to work. Well, let me back up. When my dad went bankrupt, he cooked donuts in the middle of the night at Cecil's supermarket to put food on the table.
Wow.
My mom went to work in Germantown Mall for Julie Klein's mother owned a cheese shop. That was her first job. And then she ended up at Goldsmith selling fragrances. So you can imagine you're a woman with a French accent selling French perfumes and stuff. She made a lot of money. So back, let's say in the late 70s, she was making 25,000 a year with her commissions. Well, that's like making over 100,000 today. That's a
Yeah.
lot of money. So my parents worked their butt off to get past that. And I learned resourcefulness. Like my dad was always good at fixing things around the house. Nobody was lazy in my house. I mean, yeah, there's some lazy people, but not my parents. Saw a very good work ethic. My mom was a phenomenal cook, but she wouldn't even let you clean a spoon. And so when I talk about learning from osmosis, is just watching her cook. I just absorb it, and I just gravitated toward it. I tell this story when I was probably like in 8th or 9th grade, and one day out of school, I decided I was going to make crepes. I don't know why. So I took her Better Homes and Garden cookbook off the shelf, took the blender out. I made crepes, but I didn't make regular crepes. Like I don't make regular food. I crushed up almonds. I put chocolate syrup in it. So I made chocolate almond crepes. And then I put some Baskin Robbins Jamocha almond fudge ice cream. I don't know a lot of 9th graders making chocolate almond crepes with ice cream.
None.
And I was smart enough to clean everything up. She had no idea I'd cook crepes. And I think it was years before I told her. Like everything was spotless.
Your house was always
Um,
spotless.
yeah, you could do open heart surgery, but that's because nobody was allowed to come play at our house. Like
Right. Had to
no one
take your
was allowed
shoes
to be
off.
at Dan's house. Take your shoes off. You're not welcome,
Right.
literally. So I learned definitely how to cook, and a love of cooking, and in some, I shouldn't say in some ways I'm better than her. I'm probably better than her because the ingredients that are more mainstream now were not even known back then.
Right.
For Super Bowl Sunday, I made jalapeno cheddar lobster corn dogs with a spicy truffle mayo. I mean, nobody even knew those ingredients back then. So from that standpoint. So I've always enjoyed cooking. I think it's one is I think we all want attention in some way, positive attention, whether you're good at singing, whether you're good at decorating, making flowers. You want something and people go, wow, you do that very well. Well, I can't sing, that's for sure. I'm a little funny, but I can definitely cook. And it's fun to entertain people, especially when you do something and you get that wow, or like, oh my God, that was amazing. And, that kind of thing. So I've always enjoyed cooking, but cooking for one, I don't do very often. It's just not practical. But back to the baklava. This is an interesting story. So when my mother died, the first year my father, he was mourning, he didn't do anything. The second year he wanted to start dating and it was COVID, so he couldn't date. I think the third year he started going out, he learned how to make brownies and baklava. So that was his date magic, is making baklava and brownies for the ladies.
Still the great story I remember about your dad is in high school, and I think Turetsky and
I knew you were headed there.
Yeah, they were rolling your house, and your dad.
He rolled it twice.
Did he? Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah.
That's what my dad went after him. The first time my dad was picking up the toilet paper, then he came back the second time.
Oh, and he chased him. And I think Turetsky had that white station wagon at the time, his parents' car. And
well,
go ahead.
Well, this is the funny part. My dad was wearing the tidy whities and the t-shirt. He gets in his car, chasing Brian Turetsky down Shady Grove at 2:00 in the morning. He pulls in front of him, slams on the brakes, and I think he punches him.
He did punch him.
Known as Punching Dave. And I think my dad, they threatened, they were going to file charges. And honestly, Brian Turetsky probably needed just a good ass chewing from his parents.
Look, he scared. I remember talking to Sam about this, and Sam, if you notice, was a big guy. Sam was scared of your dad. He goes, Sam didn't want to say a word. He didn't say a word or get involved. He goes, no way. He goes, he was scared. So it was anyway, it's a funny story. Yeah. I'm glad that no charges were pressed. Brian did enough stuff in his time that he should have had charges pressed against him. Believe me. You have two beautiful children, both inside and out. Your daughter Jordan, with a Y, and son Jared. I had the opportunity to meet Jared when you came to my store one time, and talked to him on the phone when he was he was going to sell Cutco, and he and I are Facebook friends. Tell us just a little bit about them and what they've brought to your life.
They're both different, but they're both great. I tell people I'm a better adult dad than I was a kid dad. I wasn't a bad dad. I was there for what they needed. I took them to school after our divorce. I would take off school to take them. I never missed anything that they had going on. I took them to doctor's appointments when their mom was working because she had a job. And, when you own a business, obviously you don't have a job. Everyone assumes you just can do whatever, whenever, which was fine. I've never been the type of dad that tells my kids what to do. Of course, you tell them little things, but I've been more of the guiding dad. And when there's a lesson to be taught, like there's very few lessons I had to teach them in life. They were pretty good kids. I think they got the best of their mom and their dad, which was a blessing. But like, I'll give you an example. My son, he had a job one summer and he didn't want to do it. He wanted to quit. He goes, I have $3,000 in the bank. I don't have a family to support. I can quit. I said, well, part of the deal is you have this car, you're supposed to work. And if you're not going to work, you need to put in 2 weeks notice and get another job. He goes, well, I don't want a job. I said, okay, well, you don't want a job, leave your car in my driveway and you can pick it up when school starts. He goes, well, I own half the car. I go, you do own half the car. I own the half with the motor. And so that was his lesson. And then my daughter, there was a snow day and I had to go out of town on business. And she said, can I have some girlfriends spend the night? And, snow days in Nashville is like, there's no snow. I mean, anybody can drive, but, there's a hill that has an ice cube on it. So they shut it down an extra day. And at that time, Jillian, who works for me, was working out of my house and she was there at 8 in the morning. Jordan knew this. Well, her and her girlfriends went out and they got margarita bud. They paid somebody at a convenience store to buy it for them. They were, teenagers. And I told her, I said, I'm not mad that you drank, because every kid drinks in high school, more or less. At least when we were growing up, I don't know anybody who didn't drink, right?
Right.
And I'm like, you're getting in trouble because you're stupid. Like, you are way smarter in school, but you're not very smart. I said, you didn't throw them away in the trash can. I would have thrown them away in the neighbor's trash can, so there'd be you knew Jillian was coming at 8. I go, you're getting punished because you're a dumbass. And so I said, I want to take your car. I said, but that's my punishment. Then I'd have to take you to school and get you where you have to go. I said, no. I said, you're going to go to 10 AA meetings, and then you're going to know what it's like when alcohol goes bad. I didn't think she had an alcohol problem. She didn't, but I just wanted her to learn a different lesson. So I was very fortunate. And even when it came time for my kids to get college educated, I said, do you want to start a business? You can take that money and go start a business, and I'll help you with that. And I encouraged them both to be CPAs. I said, not because I think you should make a career as a CPA, but a CPA will always be able to make money, whether it's starting a business, buying a business, working in a business, having that skill set is very valuable. So they both work for the Big Four. My son works in economic consulting. He does a lot of data analysis for expert witnesses. They work with SEC cases, antitrust. Countries hire them for economic consulting, all sorts of stuff. He can't talk about who he works for because of the secret, the confidentiality, but he works on some pretty cool stuff. And my daughter, she went out and found a job on her own in private equity, had 12 interviews to get this job over 3 months. And she does analysis. As a matter of fact, they're in LA. She just moved out there, and they buy and sell software companies. So we're in the same industry, and she analyzes their portfolio companies. So it's really cool to see her in the same industry. Now, obviously, she's dealing with bigger entities, so I'll probably learn some things from her, and maybe she'll learn a few things from me. But, I've always said, as a parent, you're judged on 2 things. One, can your kids support themselves? It doesn't matter if they're a ditch digger or CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Are they off the payroll? And, a lot of these parents, they enable their kids and they keep paying their cell phone bills when they're 30 years old. You're teaching your kids nothing. And number 2 is, are they not assholes? And my kids are not assholes. They're good human beings, and I'm proud of them for the human beings they are above anything else.
That's awesome. I saw a picture of Jordan with a cigar.
Yeah, we went, I like to go hang out with my kids. I said when I used to go to Atlanta, I'd take her and her girlfriends out to dinner, and then we went to the Red Phone booth, to Cigar Bar, and I'm going to go out there next month to see her for my birthday. My sons and I are going to hang out this weekend. So it's nice to be in a position. I'm not my kids' friend. I'm their parent, and I'm there to give them advice if they want it. But we hang out and we enjoy time together, the things we get to do. And now my son's engaged. His daughter, his thanks. His fiance is lovely. She's been part of our family for a long time. So they came down to the beach for Thanksgiving. And so, they're all good kids. They're all doing well. And, I don't tell them what to do, because unless they ask, or every now and then I might give them my opinion, but I'm not one of those helicopter parents trying to tell their kids what to do. It's like, you know what? If I tell them what to do, I'm not paying their bills. I don't have a right to tell them what to do.
Right.
And I don't want to tell them what to do. Just like I don't want them to tell me, hey, Dad, you should, do this, don't do that. It's like, they're not going to tell me what to do, and vice versa. So we have a very good, healthy relationship, which is nice. And, one day if I have grandkids, I'm not going to be the change the diapers and babysit grandpa. I'm going to be the come hang out at the beach, or let's go to Costa Rica, or let's do something fun. Not, I'm not your babysitter.
Right. What would you say are the most important lessons you've learned in life, if you could just name a few?
Wow, it's easy, but it's tough. Definitely the importance of giving back. Don't be an A player in a C game. I see a lot of people who have come to me for business advice, and I'm like, your business model sucks. Like, oh, I'm going to make this thing and it's $10. Well, how many of these $10 widgets do you have to sell to make money? Right? I'm not saying you can't. It's like, so just focusing on a better business model. Like, when you go to the bank, you're not getting extra money because you worked hard for it. So why do you want to work hard? I think there was a point where there was pride and, oh, he first one in, last one out, he's hard. And then I think there's a whole generation who's seen, especially with COVID, all these people work to get to retirement and they die. Right.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine read a book, and basically what it was saying is the next 10 years of your life are the best 10 years you will have the rest of your life. Right. And if you think about it, you need to enjoy the journey as you go and not wait till you're 65 or 70 to retire, because guess what? You might not be in good enough shape to travel and enjoy those things. And it doesn't mean spend every dime you have and go stupid, but enjoy the journey. Like, great, you have a bigger house. Does that bring you any more happiness? I don't know. Maybe it does. It doesn't bring me any more happiness. Right. So, enjoy the journey. You're not guaranteed. I mean, how many people do you know died during COVID? Or I forgot the family in our neighborhood, but I remember a man had a heart attack and on Kirby ran in a tree and died. Lived across the street from my parents. His wife, I think, was a nurse, had 2 kids. I mean, you just don't know what's going to happen tomorrow when you walk out that door.
No, we never will. And we never will. Once again, I want to thank 2 sponsors for podcasts, Roof and Nail and Buckley's Grill. Buckley's is owned by Ken Dick and Jeff Fiorinelli, and Roof and Nail is co-owned by Kelly Potter. Buckley's is at 5355 Poplar Avenue, right at the state. Kelly Potter's company is located out of Olive Branch, but they will work and do work anywhere in the tri-state area. Michael, if somebody's interested, restaurant owners interested in learning more about CaterZen, what's the best way for them to contact you or the company?
Just go to CaterZen.com, CaterZen.com. There's a lot of free resources. So if anybody's doing catering and wants to know how to grow their catering sales, there's great resources on there. You can book a walkthrough of our software if you're in the market. This has been a lot of fun, just sort of going down memory lane and sharing some stories. So it's been a lot of fun, a lot of history.
Yeah, you've given me a lot of advice over the years, and I have to say, because of my stubbornness or whatever it was, and in some cases, in many of the cases, maybe stupidity at times too, I didn't listen. And that's the past. And I'm thankful you're still here and believe in me and my future. My parents have always loved you. And you drove in and were a pallbearer at my dad's funeral back in 2013. And that was very special to me. Actions always speak louder than words, but in my opinion, words are very important too. And I want you and the audience to know how much you mean to me, even if I haven't shown it like I should have sometimes. And I just really want to tell you that. And thank you for coming on everything you've done, coming on the show. And, listening to you always motivates me. So I always enjoy, doing this and then also talking to you on the phone too. So I really appreciate it.
Well, I tell you, it's a big honor to be interviewed, because I was wondering, when the fuck are you going to call me up? Because you have all these other super great people being interviewed. It's like, when's my turn?
Well,
you've done well with your podcast. You've definitely outpunched your weight class, getting the people that you've gotten on there in such a short period of time.
Yeah, I never thought I would.
Continued success with that.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Michael.